Carmen and I are about 36 hours away from leaving on this next part of the Canada-wide journey. This time we're going to be heading up to Whitehorse and over to Haida Gwaii, and so much is already planned out, ready to go on this 12-day, almost 6,000 kilometer trip that we are going to be embarking on. But I tell you something recently, I just saw Tim Sheets talking about his trip across Canada from 3 years ago. And I want to show you that clip. Why? Because it ties into the prophetic word that I heard now over 26 years ago, that out of Western Canada, out of Vancouver area, that there would be a move of God, that there was a light shining, and that light would shine so brightly that it would come across Canada, move down into the States, and begin to envelop the world. And many of you have heard me talk about that. But Tim Sheets shares in this clip that I'm going to show something that I've never heard before. Just heard this a few days ago, and I almost fell over when I heard him say it. Because it does connect directly to that and this 18-month journey, number of journeys that we have been on. So enjoy this, and I'll come up right after.
Now, breakthrough angels are angels that I first saw about 3 years ago. I was on a teaching time throughout Canada. Well, one of the prophets had given me, Chuck Pierce had given me a word to go and teach angels or release angels through the provinces of Canada. And I didn't know how to do that, but one of the intercessors heard it and they set it up. Anyway, the first time I saw these breakthrough angels, Kelsey, it was in Vancouver, and they were carrying these huge mallets, like you would see if you've ever been to like a state fair, and you see when they strike that and send the bell up, and you hit it with the mallet.
Yes.
Well, they were striking the ground, and when they hit the ground, they would shout, break up, hit it again, break out, and break through. And they just kept doing that. Break up, break out, break through.
Wow.
And I began to see this all across Canada when I would be at a different place. There would these breaker angels would be there. When I came back here to Middletown, Ohio, and here at our place, first service, I saw these breaker angels break up, break out, and break through. And here, the word of the Lord was, breakthrough angels are now activated, and Pharaoh will not have the final word. Now, Pharaoh, of course, was the leader of the government during the Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
So these breakthrough angels in these 3 months somehow are breaking things up in an oppressive government. They're breaking us out, and they're going to break us through. So something strategic is being led forth right now.
Wasn't that amazing? Well, it was January 21st of 2022, 18 months ago, that I heard the Lord say that on that weekend would be the beginning of the fulfillment of that 26-year-old prophecy. And it was then that just a few days later, Barry Wunsch held up a spike, and then that got driven in the ground at Derby Reach, and I was called to go there. And out of that, the Lord then called me to go to Ottawa and put a spike behind the Parliament buildings. And then he called Carmen and I to go to coast, from sea to sea across Canada, and putting spikes in the farthest east and into the farthest south and a few other locations. And now I'm going to show you a clip, because this also ties into this. I mean, it's amazing. Dutch Sheets, so Tim Sheets, Dutch Sheets, brothers who were actually part of putting the 50 spikes in across the United States into every capital of every state, and then brought 12 spikes into Canada, one of those which was what Barry Wunsch held up on January 23rd on that Sunday morning. And it was that spike that went in the ground. And so this does tie back to Tim Sheets and Dutch Sheets, all this journey. But just in these last couple weeks, from 5 days ago with Tim Sheets, and before that a couple weeks ago with Dutch Sheets, as Dutch Sheets began to talk about a dream where there would be anchors placed around the United States. And when he ever talks about America, the Lord said to me, that is Canada as well. And then the Lord said something to me specifically about that. So enjoy this clip from Dutch Sheets talking about these anchors that were being placed, and that those anchors would then be connected, that the cables would then be connected to those anchors.
Then, on the stage, two massive, she puts it in cap, all cap, massive steel cables dropped in front of the leaders seated there. Each cable had a very large steel ring on each end. So, 2 cables, 4 rings. As soon as the cables hit the stage, 4 angels appeared and carried the cables out of our location. We then could see the angels with the cables on the overhead screen. 2 angels carrying 1 cable, each holding a ring in their hands. 1 angel went north to an anchor that had already been set in place and was attached deep into the ground. The angel placed the ring over the anchor, securing it in place. The other angel took his ring south and secured it to an anchor there, a previously placed deep anchor there. The 2 angels with the other cable took their rings east and west, securing them to anchors in those locations. Then, on the stage in front of the leaders, 2 more cables fell. The 4 angels returned and did as before, this time taking the cables and securing the rings to anchors located northeast and southwest, northwest and southeast. Now, we were looking at the map on the screen through the crisscross of these cables that had been anchored in place. Then the Lord spoke again and said, "There is a shaking that is coming, but you must not fear. You must know and be convinced that this nation is anchored and surrounded. Know that," in all capital letters, know that.
Well, as you heard about those cables brought by angels, put onto anchors from the north to the south, to the east to the west, and then diagonally as well. And the Lord said to me, those spikes that you have been putting in are anchors, are the anchors of which these cables will be strapped across Canada to hold Canada in the midst of the shaking that's going to be coming. And many are saying in mid-September that will be beginning. And then he laid out how those spikes were to go, and he said, you haven't finished. You know, we did the 18,500 kilometers across Canada, but he said, you haven't gone to the north and you haven't gone to the furthest west on the ocean, which is Haida. And he said, you need to finish that. So immediately we began to prepare, and we are leaving in about 36 hours to begin the journey to drive up to Whitehorse, to go there to drive a spike into the land there in Whitehorse, come down and go across the Haida, the furthest west of Canada on the Pacific Ocean, so that we'll go from sea to sea and from the north to the south. And then the Lord showed me how those cables would be placed to these spikes that he's calling anchors. And as you see that picture, I'm showing that now, amazing to see how it almost looks like the Lord is cradling Canada, and that those cables cross over the whole southern region of Manitoba, Winnipeg, and the center of Canada, down to the very border where we put a spike right there where the Red Sea crosses into Manitoba. And so now completing these anchors on this coast-to-coast, sea-to-sea journey. So join with us, because when we finish this in Haida on July 15th, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, that means 1:30 Toronto time or Ontario, 2:30 Maritimes, 3 p.m. In Newfoundland, and wherever your time zone is, we're going to do a live Zoom Because I believe I want to have, and the Lord's really saying, to have people in all the provinces across the great nation of Canada, and hoping to have people in the 3 territories as well, to join together, because when we come to drive that last spike in Haida, he said, it is time to break the curse over Canada. I know that sounds like a lot. I'm just telling you what he has shared with me. I think over these 18 months, I've been hearing the Lord clearly. And when he said that one to me, I realized the magnitude of that statement. It's not just about me. It's about everybody who've been doing what they've been doing for decades, for, over 100 years. People have been doing and preparing and doing the work. But he's called me to light a fire there in Haida, because of the prayer of the saints are like an oil. He showed me it's like an oil that is soaken into, has drenched the land of Canada, all the prayers of the saints for these many decades. And he says, as you do that, there's going to be a fire that's going to burn from the west to the east. That's going to ignite something in the breaking of the curse over Canada. And believing that from July 15th, as we do that and join together to be a part of that we're going to see something incredible in the days, weeks, and months to follow, in the shaking that's going to come to the very foundation of this nation, to bring something new that's going to be connected to commanding the forward, the way the words that were spoken at the very foundation of Canada, that this would be a nation under God, and to honor Yahweh in all these things. So hopefully you can join us again, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, July 15th. That's a Saturday. Love to see you as a part of that, and just believing for incredible things in this time.